I started my YouTube channel almost 6 months ago, and since then I've been collecting Blu-rays like crazy. And now that we've reached the new year, I think it's about time that I show you my Blu Ray collection in full. So let's get into it. Welcome to Silver Screen Talk. My name is Luke LaPointe. I started this channel because movies are a big part of my life, and I want to talk about them with people who care about them as much as I do. With that, remember to hit that like and subscribe button. Most importantly, I want to hear you down in that comment section. What does your collection look like? How many Blu-rays do you have? What are your favorite parts of my collection? What do you think that I should pick up in 2021? What are you looking to pick up in 2021? I want to hear it all from you because I want to know what my shopping list should look like for the next few months. So let's get into it. Now, before we actually get into it, this is going to be a long video, so if anyone could tag what times each movie is at, that would be a big help for me. And let's start this Blu-ray collection now. First up, we have 21 and 22 Jump Street, two of my favorite comedy movies of the 2010s, and it was a really nice, revitalization of an old TV series. I think this came out of nowhere. No one expected this to be good, especially with Channing Tatum and Jonah Hill. They didn't know how to work together. I think they worked out really well. Some of the funniest scenes of the 2010s, scenes that make me laugh over and over again, like when they get high on HFS and 21 Jump Street, always makes me crack up, and they just work so well together, Jonah Hill and Channing Tatum, and you have two really interesting plots. Love these movies. Next up, you have the 300 Steelbook, and I love this Steelbook. I got it for cheap on eBay, and this is Zack Snyder, very stylized, very cool action. Gerard Butler doing what he does best in action movies, and just, Spartan action, a lot of nice hand-to-hand combat, very, shot creatively, and, picked this up early in my collection. Very happy I have it. Next up, we have the 40-Year-Old Virgin, one of my favorite comedy movies of the 2000s. And Steve Carell, I love him, man. Michael Scott, Brick Tamland, I love him in movies like Get Smart, Dinner with Schmucks. And this is just a really funny movie that launched his career and gave us so many funny Steve Carell moments, whether it be the chest waxing scene or him describing what he does to a woman. And it is just a really fun plot that I always enjoy watching. The jokes never get tired for me, and you get people like Seth Rogen and Paul Rudd earlier in their careers, so there's a lot of good things about this movie. Next up, we have the Airplane Steelbook. Picked this up in July. Love Airplane, one of my favorite comedy movies ever. I think this is just absolutely bonkers, insane, crazy, and it's just one of the best satires of all time, too. One of the best satirical movies of all time, and you have great performances from Leslie Nielsen. Leslie Nielsen, this is what launched him into that comedic role where he would play characters like Frank Drebin. This is what launched him into it. So many fun moments, so many quotable moments, so many moments that are just referenced and stuff like Family Guy TV shows forever and ever. I love this movie. Can't wait to watch it again and again and again. Next up, we have the Alien Anthology, Alien through Alien Resurrection and some documentaries. I do love the Alien franchise, and as bad as it gets, as good as it gets, I stick by it. And this is a very interesting collection because of the documentaries specifically. Not only do you have extended editions, whatever, for each movie, but the documentaries really go in depth with each movie and shows what went wrong and what went right with each movie. Very excited that I got to watch those documentaries because it showed me the psychology of the movies a little more, what was going on behind the scenes, which made each movie come out a certain way. So very happy I got this. Next up, we got American Psycho. Got this for Christmas. This is a great movie, one of my favorite Christian Bale performances. Chilling performance. Him as Patrick Bateman is absolutely magnificent. He's an absolute psycho in this movie. And this just has a lot of fun referential moments. It's absolutely bone-chilling. It's absolutely horrifying at times. I love it to death. Can't wait to watch it again. Next up, we have the Anchorman double feature. I do love Will Ferrell. I think he's a great actor, great comedic actor. I love his delivery. I love his style. And this is his two of his best movies. Anchorman, I think, is his best movie. And I think that Ron Burgundy, excuse me, I forgot his name for a second, I was blanking out. I think that Ron Burgundy is his most iconic character. He just has a way with this character, and then his supporting cast, especially Steve Carell, Paul Rudd, David Koechner, they're all super hilarious. They work so well together. Christina Applegate, great in these movies. Love the fight scenes in this movie because they're over the top, bonkers, crazy. So much fun. Love these movies. Next up, we have Animal House, another one of my favorite comedy movies. I love this movie. As a college student, I get into some wacky stuff, do some crazy stuff. Nothing compares to what they do in this movie, The Deltas. This is an absolutely hilarious movie, an absolutely landmark movie, iconic for comedy, for college movies, everything. John Belushi in this movie is absolutely freaking hilarious as Bluto. You have other great performances. Tim Matheson is great as Eric Stratton. And I just love this movie, again, because I can just quote it all the time. Little quotes. I'm going to be walking around my frat going, Eric Stratton, Rush Trammon, damn glad to meet you. I'm going to be doing stuff like that. So, because of that, I mean, it's just so easy to reference, especially when you're on a college campus, especially if you're a cinephile like I am. I just got this for like $5 on eBay. Steal. Absolute steal. I would have paid $20 for this. Next up, we have the Back to the Future trilogy, one of my favorite trilogies of all time. It's just such a fun trilogy with one of the greatest movies of all time in Back to the Future. And, you know, Michael J. Fox as Marty McFly, Christopher Lloyd, so many other great performances, and you have an interesting plot with the Back to the Future stuff. It does get a little repetitive in Back to the Future 2 and 3, but they're still fun enough to suffice. Next up, we have The Big Lebowski, one of the best comedy movies of the 90s. Jeff Bridges as the dude. So funny. And John Goodman as John. John Goodman is just hilarious in this movie. So quotable. Everything that John Goodman says in this movie is quotable. I mean, over the line! Stuff like that. Quotable as hell. Such a fun plot. You have some weird, quirky performances from, like, this is a Coen Brothers movie, so you know there's going to be some weird, quirky performances. There absolutely are, and they're just so much fun. Next up, we have Birds of Prey, the fantabulous emancipation of one Harley Quinn. I think I got it right. Yes. But Birds of Prey. And I actually really enjoyed this movie. Some people didn't as much, but I knew going into this was going to be a Harley Quinn movie, not a Birds of Prey movie. And I really enjoyed Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn in Suicide Squad. She was one of the bright points of that movie. And I just really love her again in this role. I think she's cemented herself as Harley Quinn. And, you know, it has a lot of fun moments, a lot of fun scenes. And while we do not get the Birds of Prey in action that much, they are great to see on screen, and they have great actresses in those roles, whether it be Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Rosie Perez, and Smollett Bell. Oh, forget her name. I can't remember her name, and I feel terrible. Jessie Smollett Bell, I think. But I really loved this movie. I loved Ewan McGregor in this movie. I had a lot of love about this movie. Next up, we have The Blind Side, just an absolutely touching movie, one of Sandra Bullock's best performances. And, you know, it's just a true story which always brings tears to the eyes. It's just so beautiful about how sports bring people together and everyone like that, and family. And it also has the GOAT, and I'm a Gamecock fan, but I'm saying the GOAT, Coach O, in this movie. Go Tigers! But yes, this has Coach O in this movie, so that just elevates it even more, his acting performance. I do love this movie, though. I got it a couple days ago, $4.99. Next up, we have The Cabin in the Woods, one of my favorite horror movies, one of my favorite horror comedy movies, and this is just a send-up of the genre, kind of the way that Scream was. It's a little meta, but it's also just, it uses horror tropes to its advantage, horror tropes that horror fans have gotten very used to over the years, and it uses it very intelligently to move the plot forward and actually subvert expectations. You have very fun performances in it, very fun callbacks to previous horror movies, stuff like that, where they reference stuff like the Deadites, and just the monsters attacking everyone's scene is one of the most fun scenes in film history, in my opinion. I enjoyed it every time. Very happy I got this for Christmas. Next up, we got Caddyshack, another one of my favorite comedy movies. I have so many favorite comedy movies, so if you hear me say it's my favorite comedy movie, it's because I love so many of them. This is another one where it just has so many great performances. Chevy Chase, Rodney Dangerfield, Bill Murray is absolutely golden in this role. Absolutely love him. It has so many quotable moments, and, you know, it's not a bad golf movie. Next up, we have Casino. One of my more favorite, I love all Scorsese's films, but this is one of my more favorite Scorsese films. It's one of his most ambitious, for sure. You have great performances in this movie, whether it be Joe Pesci, Robert De Niro, Sharon Stone, who is a stone-cold fox, one of the sex symbols in the 90s. She's just so hot. And I love movies like this that depict gambling, that depict casinos, the ins and outs of that. As a gambler, as a sports bettor, whatever, like, I like to see the insides of that, the behind-the-scenes stuff of that. It interests me a lot. I love gambling movies, and just seeing that, it interests me a lot. You also have the mob story going along with it. I think it's a really fun story, very interesting story. I really love this movie. Next up, we have A Clockwork Orange, a movie that I have to see again. I told you, I've only seen this once or twice, but I thoroughly enjoy it. It is one of Stanley Kubrick's best. It's one of his most unique films. He's got a lot of them, but it's one of his most unique films. It depicts violence in a certain way, in an interesting way, and has a lot of mature themes, delivers it, again, in a very interesting, quirky way. I don't have much to say about this movie because, again, I saw this a couple years ago. I don't remember much about it. That is what I do remember about it. I'm actually going to be watching this soon. Rewatching it. Next up, we have the Cornetto Trilogy, one of my favorite trilogies of all time. I love Edgar Wright. I love Simon Pegg. I love Nick Frost. Those three together are absolute gold. And these are three of my favorite comedy movies right here. I mean, it is just, the fact that these connect and also don't connect are just so well. Like Edgar Wright, the way he shoots a movie with foreshadowing, he's like the king of foreshadowing now, I think. And the way he just sets everything up with comedy, with some drama, with some action. Hot Fuzz is actually a legit action movie in my opinion. And I just love these movies. Nick Frost and Simon Pegg work so well together. Nick Frost honestly is one of the funniest guys in the world. Not even lying. I love these movies. I rewatch these all the time. Next up, we have the Dark Knight Trilogy, Christopher Nolan's magnum opus to the Batman movies. And these are three incredible movies that don't feel like typical superhero movies because they're not. They're crime thrillers, they're mystery movies, there's stuff like that. They are like a superhero movie as like a sub thing. It's not the superhero thing, it's there, but it doesn't feel like it's a main part. It feels like a crime thriller, which I love. And one of the things that makes these movies so great is these people right here, the villains. Heath Ledger's Joker, one of the greatest, not just villains, characters of all time, one of the greatest performances of all time. You have other great villains like Ra's al Ghul, Bane, and others. And like Christian Bale, I think he's my favorite Batman. He has a very interesting take on it, but I think it's a lot grittier and it's a lot more real, and I think it works so well. Next up, we have The Departed, a great one of Scorsese's best films. I think it is his best film in my opinion. They're up there with Goodfellas. And I, as someone who grew up Boston bred, I'm not from Boston, but Boston has been part of my life forever. I love to see stuff like this. This is depicting a fictionalized version of the Whitey Bulger story. If you don't know who he is, one of the biggest mobsters in Boston, ran the Winter Hill Gang for years. FBI Most Wanted for a long time. And this is just a great movie filled with great performances, whether you have Matt Damon, Leonardo DiCaprio, Mark Wahlberg, Martin Sheen, Jack Nicholson, Vera Farmiga. So many great performances that propel this plot. A very interesting plot with great twists and an exceptional ending with a lot of rats. Next up, we have the Deadpool movies, Deadpool 1 and 2. I picked this up a couple days ago, and it's very, very fortuitous that it says, for now, considering that I'm shooting this on Monday, and we just learned that we are going to get a Deadpool 3, and it is going to be R-rated. Thank you, Kevin Feige, for that, by the way. These are two of my favorite superhero movies. Ryan Reynolds is Deadpool. There's no one else that could pull this off with this type of comedy, the type of meta, whatever, everything. No one else could pull this off but Ryan Reynolds, and he just absolutely kills it. Thank God for that leaked test footage. And these are just two funny movies that also serve really well as superhero movies. I enjoy them to death. I have so much fun with them, and man, I'm so happy I picked these up on the cheap from Best Buy. And lastly, on this shelf, we have the Die Hard collection. All of them but A Good Day to Die Hard, because I do not want that movie in my collection. That movie is hot garbage. It's not a Die Hard movie. But all of the 4 Die Hard movies, I thoroughly enjoy. I love. Die Hard is one of my favorite action films. It is one of the perfect action films out there, like with Mad Max. This is just the quintessential action franchise, in my opinion. John McClane, Bruce Willis, John McClane, one of the greatest protagonists of all time. And you have some great villains in there. Well, you have Simon Gruber. Hans Gruber is the greatest movie villain of all time, in my opinion. You have just great airtight plots, a lot of fun action, especially in Live Free or Die Hard. And I really enjoyed these movies. Before we get into our next shelf, I want to remind you to hit that like and subscribe button. Most importantly, leave your comments down below. But I also want to show you a part of my set that I absolutely enjoy that isn't my Blu-rays. That's my posters and my flags. Starting off here, we have my Wolf of Wall Street display. That is a metal poster from Display. They're always running discounts. I'm going to link them down below, even though this is just a free ad because I love them so much. You should check them out. I have my Game of Thrones poster right here. I love Game of Thrones, all the houses, all their house words. I have John Wick watching over me as I sleep. Got some flags over here. I'm a big Boston fan. You know, just Barstool, I'm a stoolie. We got two other displays right here. Django Unchained and The Departed, two beautiful minimalist posters. And then the piece de resistance, my Game of Thrones display. Absolute beauty. I had to get it large to appreciate this art. It's absolutely beautiful. I absolutely love it. And they make my set that much better. They make my room that much better. And now back to the video. Moving right along to our second shelf now, we are starting off with Donnie Brasco, one of my favorite mob movies, and also what I think is one of the most accurate mob movies out there. Sometimes mob movies like The Godfather, which are still classics, which are still incredible, do tend to glorify the mob a little more and seem to put the mob ahead of, like, above where they really are morally too. This movie does not. This is a brutal take on the mob and really shows the true heart of Cosa Nostra, the mafia, the mob, whatever you want to call them. That is what this movie does. Great performances from Al Pacino and Johnny Depp, and a great direction from Mike Newell, making this seem really gritty. I mean, it is really gritty, and I really love this movie. I'm going to show this to my roommates soon because they're not big mob movie guys. I think they're really going to enjoy this because it's a much different mob movie. Next up, we have Elf, one of my favorite Christmas movies. And I did say Ron Burgundy was probably his most iconic, Will Ferrell's most iconic character. It might be Buddy. It's close. It's close. It's close. You know, he just has such a youthful energy, such a great energy that brings you back to just smiling and being happy all the time. Every line he says exudes happiness and the right energy and the right vibes. Will Ferrell does that really well. This is just such a fun movie that makes me smile all the time, makes me laugh all the time. It never gets old. It's just such an enjoyable Christmas movie that actually grew on me. I didn't like it at first when I was really young. I thought it was kind of stupid, and then it grew on me a lot because of Will Ferrell's performance. I absolutely love it. Next up, we have Fighting With My Family, one of my favorite films of 2019, and what I think was a sleeper hit of 2019, brought us the rise of Florence Pugh, who's one of my favorite actresses out there. I actually hope to work with her soon. Never mind that, just might get to work on some movies. But next up, we have Fighting With My Family, one of my favorite films of 2019, as well as what I think is a sleeper hit of 2019, brought us the rise of Florence Pugh, who, man, if I ever work with movies, I would love to work with her because I think she's incredible. I think she could fit in any genre. You have great performances from Nick Frost, Vince Vaughn, Lena Headey. Who plays Zach? Jack Lowden, I forgot his name. He does great too. And it balances comedy, action, comedy, drama, sport movie, you know, really well. It's a good sports movie. It's a good family movie. It's funny. It's got good drama, great performances, and there's so much to love about this movie. I think more people need to see this because it underperformed at the box office, I think. Next up, we have Friday the 13th, the 40th anniversary Steelbook edition, and this is one of my favorite slasher movies. I really think this brought the slasher genre forward, you know, ahead as much as Halloween did. It brought it to the forefront. Halloween was the first kick, and then Friday the 13th kicked the door all the way down and walked in. This is a really good slasher movie with an iconic villain in the making, a great twist, and just a lot of brutal kills. Next up, we have Game Night, one of my favorite movies of 2018. It might be my favorite movie of 2018, as well as one of my favorite comedy movies of the 2010s. And this came out of nowhere. I saw the trailer. I thought, this looked like it can be kind of bad. And then I saw it, and I was absolutely surprised. My dad and I love rewatching this movie. We have so many laughs out of this. And Jason Bateman is really good in this movie because the movie is crafted around him. It's a really clever, witty movie. Jason Bateman's a very clever, witty actor with a deadpan delivery that fits that type of comedy really well. Rachel McAdams is a great partner on screen for Jason Bateman. I think they worked really well together. You have other great performances, and just so much to love about this movie. Really, there really is. Next up, we have the heavy set. The Game of Thrones complete collection. Seasons 1 through 8. Look, season 8 exists. All right, season 8 exists. I get that, but this is still probably my favorite TV show out there. I have so much nostalgia, but so much love for this this show. Quick story. So I love Harry Potter. I read all the books by the time I was like 10, and then I saw the movies. And at that point, I was like, well, what next? What kind of fantasy stuff do I watch next? I didn't really get into Lord of the Rings. Not my type of movie. While I know they are good, it's just not my type of movie. And then I was watching HBO, and I saw a trailer for like season 3, I believe it was, of Game of Thrones. And all I saw was like dragons, fighting, fantasy setting. I go, I'm in. Let's watch it. I didn't know. And then I watched the first few episodes, and those episodes you have, murder, beheading, attempted child murder, incest, nudity, and a lot, rapes, a lot of that bad stuff. And I'm like, holy crap, I'm 12 years old. I should not be watching this. But the story is really interesting. So I chugged along and I kept watching it. I'd have to sneak it past my parents on Sundays when new episodes would come out because, again, I was too young to watch that show. And so I was there from really early. I didn't hop on the bandwagon late. And so I have a lot of love for this series. Some of the best moments in TV history, some of the best episodes in TV history, some of the best performances in TV history. Everything up to season 8 was nearly perfect, and then season 8 ruined it. Thank you, D&D, Dumb and Dumber, Benny Hoff, and I don't even remember his other name because I'm so mad. But yes, this is still a great series besides season 8, and I absolutely love it. Next up, we have The Gentleman, one of my favorite movies of 2020. I think a return to form for Guy Ritchie. I really do enjoy Guy Ritchie movies. I think he's hit or miss, but when he hits, he's really on. And this is a hit in my opinion. It's not for everyone. It's crude. Some of the stuff can be a little derogatory. You have to get over that. You have to see that as part of the comedy. But if you do that, it is a great, great movie. It is so fun. And the best part about it is the performances. We're talking about McConaughey, Charlie Hunnam, Henry Golding, Michelle Dockery, Hugh Grant, and then Colin Farrell comes in and steals the show, in my opinion, as Coach. So it had some of the funniest moments of the entire movie, whether it's just something he says or his facial expressions. He has some of the best moments in that entire movie. It's a very interesting plot, and they balance comedy, action, drama so well. Love this movie. Next up, we have Ghostbusters. Absolutely love this movie. Peak comedy, peak ghost movie. Great performances we were talking about. Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Harold Ramis, Ernie Hudson, Rick Moranis, Sigourney Weaver, Annie Potts. I forget her name. Oh, it's Annie Potts. She's the actress. She's Janine. This is a great movie. So many funny moments. So many moments that are referenced in TV and movies. Like for the 40 years to come. Absolutely love this movie. Next up, we have the Godfather Coppola restoration. I love all three of these movies. I know Godfather 3 isn't as great. It's a very convoluted plot, and then again, you also have Sofia Coppola's performance, which is, I'm going to try to be nice here. Not great, to say the least. Not great. But I still really enjoy it. And then Godfather 1 and 2 are two of the greatest movies of all time, with some of the greatest performances of all time in film history. We're talking about Al Pacino as Michael, Robert Duvall's best performance of his career, James Caan as Sonny, Marlon Brando as Don Vito is probably one of the greatest performances of all time. So many others, John Cazale, and it's just so great. It's so peak film. It is the quintessential mob movie. If you've seen a mob movie, you've probably seen The Godfather. They're just airtight plots. They do glorify the mob a little bit, but they are just so good. Next up, we have Halloween, the 2018 one, and this is a movie that really, probably the biggest surprise I've ever had in theaters. And, Halloween began to go off the rails, like in the late 80s and 90s. We talk about Halloween, even 3, and then 4, 5, 6. Whoa, weird, bad. H2O was a little better, and Halloween Resurrection, really bad. And then you have the Rob Zombie movies, which were just not great. Weird. And so I did not know what to expect of this. The trailers made it look decent, and I go, but I could get fooled. And especially with David Gordon Green directing, I'm like, I do not know what to expect with this movie. And I was thoroughly surprised by this. This is one of my favorite. This is my second favorite movie in the franchise, behind the original, which is one of the greatest horror slashers of all time. This nailed the tone of the original movie. It nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. And it didn't go off the rails. It was a great follow-up. I love that they eliminated everything after the original Halloween. Made this a direct sequel. I think that was what needed to happen. You need to get all that stupid bullshit lore out of that movie. And great performances from Jamie Lee Curtis, Judy Greer, Andy Matichak, and great carnage in this movie. Set up sequels really well. I'm very excited for Halloween Kills. It's one of my most anticipated movies of 2021. I love this movie. I think I'm going to love Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends. Next up, we have the Harry Potter 8 film collection, plus Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Harry Potter is one of my favorite, if not my favorite, film franchise ever. It's just what I grew up on, really, the books and the movies, and it's just magical. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. It's magical. So many fun moments. Just great stories that go through 7 whole years. And so you really get to follow and get engaged and get invested the same way I do with something like Game of Thrones. Great performances. And you got to see these actors grow up with you, especially considering I'm younger than them. I just still got to grow up with these actors, with Emma Watson, with Daniel Radcliffe, with Rupert Grint, with all the other supporting actors. And then it matches that with great adult performances who work so well with the kids. We talk about Richard Harris, rest in peace, Michael Gambon, Maggie Smith, Robbie Coltrane, Ray Fiennes, so many others. And this is just a great film franchise. I did enjoy Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. I forgot about Jason Isaacs, by the way. Jason Isaacs, too. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. I enjoyed that. Did not like Crimes of Grindelwald. That's why I did not get that. And, happy I picked up this collection. And lastly on this shelf, we have The Italian Job, a weird steelbook. It's like 3D. Look at that. But I really enjoy this movie. It's a really fun movie. It's one of my favorite Mark Wahlberg performances. Charlize Theron is really great in this movie. It's a really fun plot, and it's really good at capturing the tone, the vibes of the original movie, but bringing it into the 21st century. Really enjoyed it. Edward Norton was someone I loved to hate in this movie, and a lot of fun performances from like Mos Def, Jason Statham, Seth Green. Loved this movie. Moving right along with our third shelf now, we have Indiana Jones Complete Adventure Collection. I love the Indiana Jones movies. The first 3 are classics. Raiders and The Last Crusade are 2 of the greatest adventure movies of all time. Temple of Doom, still a great movie. Not as great as those 2, but still like an 8.5, 9 in my books. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is what it is. It's like the season 8 of Game of Thrones to the Indiana Jones movies. It's not great, but you can kind of have fun with it and poke fun at it a bit. Harrison Ford is Indiana Jones. You can never see anyone else as him. You always have great performances. You always have fun plots, fun action. Just a great film series. I'm both scared and excited for Indiana Jones 5. Next up, we have Inglourious Basterds, my favorite Tarantino movie, one of my favorite movies of all time. My aunt actually produced this, and so I have a little bias, but whatever. It's still an excellent movie. Just such a fun movie with great performances. Brad Pitt as Aldo Rain is awesome. Christoph Waltz this is his best performance in his entire career. He has a lot of great performances. This is the best performance in his entire career. Really fun, revisionist history, Tarantino style, so you know it's going to be very stylized and very fun. And then, man, there's nothing better than that theater scene at the end of the movie. Absolutely love it. One of my favorite movies. Next up, we have The Invisible Man. Probably, to me, I think the biggest surprise of 2020. This had every reason to be a terrible movie. Horror, like remake of a classic horror book, and a February release date. So one of those dump months where all those shitty horror movies go into. And the trailer made it look not as good as it was. It had every reason, every right to be terrible, and then I saw it, and man, was I blown away. It was so creative, such a great modern take on the Invisible Man. Elizabeth Moss absolutely kills it in this movie. And who plays her sister? I forget her name. Harriet Dyer. Harriet Dyer. Underrated performance in this movie. Really great creative horror. Really great creative scares. Good twists. Good turns. Great movie. One of my favorite movies of 2020. And when I got to go see movies in the theaters. That was fun too. Do you remember that? I don't. Next up, we have the James Bond Complete Collection. I love the Bond films. If you don't know, I'm doing my road to No Time to Die. And, you know, this is one of my favorite film franchises. I always wanted to be a gentleman spy. And so I love these movies to death. You know, I'll always love the James Bond movies. I'll always have a special place for them, as bad as they are, as good as they are, as great as they are. Sean Connery, obviously, iconic. Daniel Craig always does a really good Bond, as good as bad as good as or as average as his movies are. Pierce Brosnan, great in GoldenEye. I appreciate Timothy Dalton's take. I really like George Lazenby. I wish he got another chance. And then Roger Moore has some good movies, and then some of them are really campy, but they're enjoyable. So there's so much to love about this franchise. It is just the spy franchise. You know, everything that any spy thing is based off of is because of James Bond, and I cannot wait for No Time to Die. Next up, we have Jaws, which is a movie I told you in my December Blu Ray haul. I'm surprised I didn't have it in my collection before. It's one of the greatest movies of all time. It's my favorite Spielberg movie. Jaws is the most memorable movie monster ever. It's the greatest movie monster ever. I think this is the greatest monster movie ever. And this is just such a great movie. And what makes it is Roy Scheider, Richard Dreyfuss, and Robert Shaw. The chemistry that they have on set on the boat really propels the plot and really keeps you engaged between all the shark action. And then you have the brutal shark action, which is incredible. Love this movie to death. Next up, we have the John Wick trilogy. Not only one of my favorite trilogies, my favorite action franchise of the 2010s, maybe in the 21st century. These came out of nowhere. You know, I didn't know about John Wick when it first came out because I was a little younger, and then I saw it and read about it. I'm like, Keanu Reeves kills a bunch of people because they kill his dog? Seems a bit stupid. It really does. And then I saw the movie, and it was absolutely action gold with great plot. And then they filmed it really intelligently. I love that they have a former stuntman directing these movies, because it adds another layer of action that you don't see typically. And then Keanu Reeves revitalized his career. We're in a Keanu-sance now because of the original John Wick. And the two follow-ups are just as good as the first movie. I thoroughly enjoy them. I love them, and I cannot wait for John Wick 4. I love these more, because as a Keanu fan, I love these a lot more than The Matrix, because I never really got into The Matrix. Next up, we have Joker, one of my favorite films of 2019, and this is less of like a Joker movie as it is like a character study. Joaquin Phoenix absolutely kills it as Joker, and probably behind Heath Ledger, he's one of the best Jokers ever. And to think that Todd Phillips came from making Old School all the way to this is an absolutely incredible thought. The script wasn't as strong in my opinion, but Joaquin saved the movie. It was still a really good movie that pissed a lot of people off, triggered a lot of people. I really enjoyed it. Next up, we have Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2, two other movies my aunt produced. Two of my other, I think they're very underrated Tarantino movies. They are some of my favorites. I love all Tarantino movies. These are very underrated. I think they have some of the best action in the entire Tarantino-verse. Uma Thurman is great as the bride. You have great fight scenes, especially versus the Crazy 88. And there's a lot to love about these movies. Very happy I got this for Christmas from my aunt. Thank you, Erica. Next up, we have Knives Out, one of my favorite movies of 2019. Probably my favorite movie of 2019. And the cast in this is incredible. You have all A-listers. And the plot is really good. And it takes you on these twists and turns. It's not a whodunit because you know what happened. But it's like a how did it happen. So it's a really interesting twist on the whodunit by Rian Johnson. And I really love this movie. Next up, we have Mad Max, Mad Max and Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, two exceptional action movies. I do not have Mad Max 2 Road Warrior or Mad Max Fury Road because I'm waiting to get some special editions for those because they're two of my favorite action movies, especially Mad Max Fury Road. But these are two exceptional action movies. Really fun post-apocalyptic movies. Really great action because George Miller is a practical effects genius. And great performances from Mel Gibson. And yeah, great performances, especially in Beyond Thunderdome from people like Tina Turner. Great movies. Flip that. I like to keep my stuff alphabetized. Next up, we have the Men in Black trilogy, a trilogy that I really enjoy. Men in Black 2, not as great. Men in Black 3, a lot of fun. Men in Black, absolute classic. Love Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones together. Love this trilogy. Next up, we have Murder on the Orient Express. It's always great to see an Agatha Christie type novel or an Agatha Christie, mystery come to the screen. And I really like this movie, and what propelled it is the cast. The cast was absolutely exceptional. You have a bunch of A-listers in this. I think this is Johnny Depp doing really well again. I mean, I'll never forgive Amber Heard for what she did to him. He's not going to act again, most likely because of all the stuff she said, which was bullshit. And, sorry, getting off track. Still, really love this movie. Great direction from Kenneth Branagh. Even though you know what's happening, it's still really good. Next up, we have Napoleon Dynamite. Such a funny movie. And it's just such a kind of a weird movie, like kind of out there. And John Heder is great. So many quotable lines, so many quotable moments, so many fun moments. Uncle Rico is incredible. Love him. He's just Gardner Minshew. Love this movie. Next up, we have Parasite, one of the greatest movies of all time, in my opinion. This was an incredible movie. Where they talk about the social commentary, the twists, the performances, the direction. Bong Joon-ho is incredible. I want him to do more movies in the United States to see what he does with our stars. The stars in this movie were great. I know they're South Korean stars. Like they're actually bona fide A-listers in South Korea. I'd like to see what he does with bona fide A-listers in the U.S. again. Because he made, I believe it was Drive with Ryan Gosling. And so great. I mean, look, I'm going to go off this. Lee Seung-kyun was great. Cho Yeo-jung was also incredible. And there was just so much love about this movie. So happy I got this with the digital code. I can watch this whenever I want. Next up, we have Paul, another Simon Pegg, Nick Frost movie with Seth Rogen as an alien. It's not an Edgar Wright movie, so it's not as great plot-wise, but it's still a lot of fun, and it has references out the ass. Whenever you have Nick Frost and Simon Pegg on screen together, it's always a lot of fun, and this is still a lot of fun. Really enjoy this movie. Love the steelbook for this. Next up, we have Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, a really good Tarantino movie that I really enjoyed. One of my favorite movies of 2019 again. And, it was I think it was a little bit more of a polarizing Tarantino movie because it focused more on Cliff and Rick's relationship more than it did the Sharon Tate murders. But I still think I like the way we got to it. I still think we had a great performance, a great buddy performance from Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio. I think Margot Robbie pulled off Sharon Tate really well. I think Tarantino nailed the vibe of the 60s really well. There's a lot to love about this movie. My roommate, who's on the other side of this wall, hates this movie. Hates this movie. Do not understand that. I argue with him about it all the time, but everyone's entitled to their opinions. Next up, we have Old School, a great comedy movie. Really gave us Will Ferrell coming off of SNL, his first real great performance in a movie. So much fun. Todd Phillips is great with comedy. He gave us The Hangover. He gave us a lot of great comedy movies. This is another great one. And it has so many fun moments where they talk about all the Frank the Tank stuff, all the fraternity stuff. So much fun packed in one movie. Next up we have, and lastly on this shelf, we have the Ocean's Trilogy. What I love about this Ocean's Trilogy is that it comes with a deck of cards and some dice. And as a gambler, I could always use those. Those always come in handy. But I really love these movies. I think Ocean's 11 is one of the greatest heist films ever. Like, legitimately ever. And I really love Ocean's 12 and 13. They're not as great, but they're still a lot of fun because of the cast. And you still have really fun plots. They aren't as tight, but they're still a lot of fun. And moving right along to our last shelf, starting it off, we have the Planet of the Apes trilogy from the 2010s with Rise, Dawn, and War. One of my favorite trilogies of the last 2 decades, maybe of all time. This came out of nowhere and surprised a lot of people, especially after Tim Burton's terrible Planet of the Apes movie with Mark Wahlberg. And I think moving to the mocap was the perfect choice. Mixed it up, and then you have the mocap king, Andy Serkis, in there, who delivered an incredible performance as Caesar. Koba was one of the best villains of the 21st century. Had a lot of great lessons, a lot of great action. Monkeys riding apes riding horses. Apes shooting machine guns on horseback. I mean, what more can you ask for? This was an incredible trilogy. Next up, we have the Predator 4K. And I love Predator. It's one of my favorite monster movies. It's a great action movie. It's one of the most macho movies of all time. With performances from like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Carl Weathers, Jesse the Body Ventura, and you stick a bunch of other macho men in there like Bill Duke. And it's just such a fun movie with so much action, so many quotable lines. Get to the chopper. So many lines like that, which just iconic. And then a great monster with the Predator, one of the greatest monsters of all time. I don't think there's been any Predator movie that's come close to being as good as the original. Next up, we have Pulp Fiction, one of my favorite Tarantino films. I mean, look, all the Tarantino films are my favorite Tarantino films, to be totally honest. But this is a great Tarantino film, one of the most unique films of all time, with great performances. We're talking about, John Travolta as Vincent Vega, Samuel L. Jackson as Jules, and then Uma Thurman kills it as Mia Wallace, and she actually steals the show, in my opinion, and she has one of the most underrated performances of all time. Then you have Ving Rhames in there, Bruce Willis, so many other great, and you have great quotable moments, great iconic moments. The Ezekiel 25:17. Will you give me or pleasure? I'm gonna get medieval on your ass. The Fox Force 5 stuff, so iconic. This is just a great movie, in my opinion. Next up, we have The Quiet Man, a movie that you might not have ever heard of, from 1952, and this is a movie that I grew up with. My dad's a big movie guy, loves John Wayne, and this is a movie we watch all the time, and this just gives me a nice sense of nostalgia. It really is. Great performances from John Wayne and Maureen O'Hara. So many quotable moments, for me at least. And, I love this movie because I loved watching this with my dad growing up. I had to have this in my collection, if I'm being totally honest. Next up, we have the Rocky collection, all the way up through Rocky Balboa. I love the Rocky movies, besides Rocky 5, which doesn't exist to me. But these are great boxing movies. Some of the greatest boxing movies of all time. Sylvester Stallone was one of the most iconic characters of all time. He's so iconic that the people of Philadelphia kept a statue of a fake boxer out in the art museum that millions of tourists take pictures with every year. That's how iconic Rocky is. Great movies, great characters, and they spawned the Creed movies, which are even better boxing movies in my opinion. Maybe not better movies, but like better boxing movies with better boxing action. Great boxing action. Next up, we have Scarface. Now, another iconic Al Pacino performance as Tony Montana. And this movie is just bonkers, insane. So much fun. Gave us Michelle Pfeiffer. Had a lot of cocaine in it. Really captured the essence of the drug wars in Miami really well. Great Al Pacino performance and great plot. Sorry, I thought the disc came out. Next up, we have Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Oh, man, I love Edgar Wright. And this is like Galaxy Quest, like a love letter to nerds. This is just a comic book come to life in a movie. This is just such a fun movie. Great performances, great stylized, everything, great foreshadowing, great everything. Love this movie. Next up, we have this Scream 3 movie collection. I'm going to get Scream 4. I need Scream 4. I really do enjoy Scream 4. But this is the franchise that revitalized the horror movie, the horror franchise, forever. Scream revitalized the horror franchise. At that point, you just had shitty remakes, shitty sequels, shitty reboots, whether you're talking about like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Halloween, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street. Those franchises were dying, and this came in and saved the entire franchise, the entire genre, the entire horror genre. And Neve Campbell is great in all 4 movies. So is David Arquette and Courtney Cox. And then in each individual movie, you have really fun, great performances. Like they talk about Skeet Ulrich or Matthew Lillard in Scream 1, as well as Jamie Kennedy, Jerry O'Connell or Sarah Michelle Gellar in Scream 2, or Timothy Olyphant, people like Patrick Warburton in Scream 3, and then people like Emma Roberts in Scream 4. Excuse me, I've been doing this for a while. These are just great slasher movies with great carnage, a very iconic killer that could really be anyone. That's the beauty of Ghostface. I love these movies. Next up, we have Seven, one of the greatest crime thrillers of all time. Actually, the greatest crime thriller of all time, in my opinion. Just bone-chilling, and very rainy, by the way, very rainy. Great performances from Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman, and then John Doe. Kevin Spacey, oh my gosh, he's absolutely horrifying in his limited screen time in this movie, with an exceptionally gruesome, horrifying twist at the end of this movie. And this is just a great crime thriller. Next up, we have Spider-Man Into the SpiderVerse, my steelbook for this. Look at this beauty. Mwah. Mwah. Absolutely beautiful. One of my favorite superhero movies ever. This is just such a unique superhero movie, and shot it's animated really interestingly. You have a great plot, great Spider-Man, Spider-Verse characters. Love this movie, and I'm very excited as it looks like we're going to get a live-action Spider-Verse, basically, with Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, Tom Holland, and then all the other actors, Alfred Molina. All of them are coming back, which I'm very excited for. Next up, we have Superbad, my favorite comedy of all time, my legit favorite comedy of all time. I love this movie. I talked about this roommate who hates Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. This kid right here, he loves this movie, and so do I. We have so much fun watching this movie. This is just the quintessential high school movie. So many lovable, fun moments, so many funny, laugh out of your pants, piss your pants laughing moments. Mick Lovin, man. Mick Lovin, one of the most iconic comedy characters of the 2000s. It's just so much fun. I actually do have Superbad socks too. I got Superbad socks for Christmas. Next up, we have Ted and Ted 2. Like I said, love Boston. Grew up with that Boston flavor in my life. Not being from Boston, but just that city being a part of me. And this is Boston through and through in terms of a comedy movie. Mark Wahlberg, absolutely hilarious. And Seth MacFarlane as Ted, absolutely hilarious. So many fun, hilarious quotable moments that are so crude that they can only come from Boston. Love both of these movies. Next up, we have my Tenet Steelbook. Watch this. Smooch, smooch, smooch. Beauty. I think my favorite film of 2020. I know some of you didn't like it as much, it's a little confusing, but guess what? I am a Nolan fanboy, so I did love this movie a lot. This was such a great movie, such a unique movie, such a unique way of it being shot, and such a great movie. Just so Nolan at his peak, Nolan at his most Nolan, so much fun. While his characters aren't as developed, that's always been a Nolan thing. Still great performances from John David Washington, Elizabeth Debicki. My brain is mush right now. Robert Pattinson, Kenneth Branagh, so many others. This is just a great movie. I love this movie. I love the inversion, and it was just so great. That's all I can say about it. Next up, we have Top Gun, one of the premier action films of the 80s. Tom Cruise, absolutely great in this movie. Love it. I can't wait for Top Gun Maverick. Next up, we have Us, one of my favorite. Next up, we have Us, one of my favorite movies of 2019. One of my favorite horror movies of 2019. This was an incredible movie. Jordan Peele, he is just solidifying himself as a great director. I can't wait for what he comes out with. He's just so great. To think he came from Key and Peele and Mad Magazine to this. Such a great movie. Great social commentary. Great performances. When we talk about Winston Duke or Lupita Nyong'o, who's one of the best actresses in Hollywood. And two great twists back to back. And lastly, we have The Wolf of Wall Street Steelbook. I love this movie so much. It's my second favorite movie of all time, behind Mad Max Fury Road. And the crazy thing about this movie is that it's true. And the crazier thing about this movie is that they had to omit so much from Jordan Belfort's book because what they did in that movie, or what they did in real life, was so much more obscene than what happened in the movie. So while that movie was so crazy, out of this world, bonkers, real life was just that much crazier. I love this movie. So much fun. It's a 3-hour movie that never stalls. Leonardo DiCaprio, I think it's his best performance of his entire career. Jonah Hill, really, really funny as Donnie Azoff. And just so many great supporting performances. Absolutely love this movie. And that's it. That's my whole Blu Ray collection. I'm going to keep building. Remember, I've only been doing this for 6 months, so I'm going to keep building. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure that the like and subscribe button and comment down below about your collections. What do you want me to pick up? What do you love about my collection? What are your favorite parts of your collection? All that good stuff. Thank you so much, and keep on loving movies as much as I do.